Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show. My name is Mark Devlin, and this is Scotland's #1 politics chat discussion from an anti-nationalist perspective. I am here tonight with my co-hosts, David Griffiths and Mary Devlin. How are you both tonight?
I'm very well, thank you.
I'm very well also, thank you.
Oh, that's very good, David. Glad to hear
We're
that.
all well.
Okay, now, regular viewers will know this show is going out live on Twitter, Facebook, and on YouTube. So please find us there if you can. What are we going to be looking at tonight, Mary?
Well, tonight I'm going to be talking about Michael Matheson, the Scottish Minister of Lies and Pilfering from the Public Pocket.
Oh, very good. Very good. David, what are you going to be? Can you beat that?
Yeah, I can do almost anything for this show. Tonight, I will be looking at the SNP's plans for a Tory-free Scotland.
Oh, yes. It's ethnic cleansing, I think, involved there. And we'll all be talking about the hate monster and hate monsters and the failure of devolution. All great topics, indeed.
And, of course, we have Zoomer of the Week.
Right. So we'll be back with all that and much more very shortly. So see you soon. If I can find anything. Mm-hmm. Titles. There we go. Great. Welcome back to the Majority Show, Scotland's #1 politics chat. And thank you all for everyone who's coming in there on the chat itself. Our aim at the Majority is a better Scotland without the toxic nationalism that is strangling Scotland's potential. We all know about that toxic nationalism. It's all around us, but thankfully, well, we hope that it is getting less. Well, we'll wait and see. I'm here tonight with David and Mary, and we're really glad you're joining us because it's going to be a great show tonight. As always, a huge thanks to UK Union Voice and United Against Separation Facebook pages, where many of you are watching from tonight.
And as always, remember, sharing is caring. So the #1 thing you can do to help is to like the show on YouTube to get the likes up.
We need the likes.
Exactly. We do like a like. So drop a like if you can. And of course, if you can subscribe, please do so, which will increase the reach of the show at the click of one button. Boy.
Actually, I saw the thing on another channel. I don't know if it will do it for this channel, but when you say press the subscribe button,
yeah,
apparently the big button goes all colours underneath. I don't know. Maybe I've got the word wrong.
That sounds fancy.
Not, yeah, but maybe it does. Anyway, okay. And we all need to get the word out that we are all the majority and we won. And what better way to do that than a majority mug or an Abolish Holyrood t-shirt, just like this classic item I am wearing right now, if Mary would remove that thing. Yeah, okay. So we have a whole load of stuff available in the majority shop, mugs, t-shirts, mouse mats and so on. We can show your support for our movement. Everything you buy does support the show, and there's a discount code there as well.
Okay.
Mary,
is it me? Hang on.
No, it's Mary.
Well, as usual, I'll be managing the tsunami of comments, so please keep them short and snappy, and I'll try to get as many up on screen as I can.
Right. Okay. We have a lot to go through this week, so we'll just get straight up started with the hate monster.
Ooh.
Last week on this show, we talked about the introduction of Humza's hate crime bill, which will go live on April the 1st. No, it's not an April Fool's joke, although the joke perhaps is on decent Scots who are going to be oppressed by this legislation. So we're beginning to see how this act, I think it's an act now, not a bill. I think there was a bill and now is an act, is being conducted. First was the introduction of the hate monster, a new furry friend who will stop you speaking your mind. And where is he? Oh, where'd he go? Oh, he wasn't there. Replaced by King Charles. Ah, there he is there. He'll make you want to vent your anger. He says, this little guy who looks a bit like a pickle. What colour is it? An orange pickle.
I think it looks a little bit like that. You know that picture of Nicola Sturgeon?
Yes.
The one that we like with the one that we tried to get a license for?
Yes, that one. Is it in this clip here, is it, can you tell the difference between the top picture and the bottom picture? Not really. I says anyway.
They're both Muppets.
This cute fellow is apparently specially targeted to 18 18 to 30-year-old males who have been economically excluded. It said so on the Police Scotland website. So we're sure that wee Jimmy, who's injecting heroin in the scheme, is going to look at that and go, "Oh, my life is full of hate, and I must repent. Give me a hug, hate monster now." David, is that kind of? Do you think this is a infantilization of Scottish politics, or is there something more sinister?
Well, to me, it's indicative of the utterly and increasingly bizarre relationship between Police Scotland and the SNP, because this, I think, came out from Police Scotland. And the legislation itself represents a massive step back to the days when blasphemers were sent to jail and brilliant, groundbreaking comedians like Lenny Bruce, for example, were hounded and were unable to work because of the words they used. This was 60 years ago. That poor man was completely hounded to his death because he said some rude words. And now,
or 2 words.
It's just unbelievable. So now we've got Police Scotland presenting this not as something sinister or something dark, but something funny and light-hearted. And I mean, the very idea of the hate monster. I remember when what was that TV show called? Blankety Blank came on BBC.
Right.
A TV reviewer said, "This is just the last word in cretinism," and I thought that's about right. This makes Mr. Blobby look like Monty Python. I mean, are you kidding? This is awful. It's just unspeakably, unbelievably crass, childish, puerile, completely inappropriate. Everything, including the exaggerated Scottish slang. And come on, you utter fool! Stop doing this. The deliberate vagueness of the legislation, like that girl who made the model of it said that the hate monster graphic they made looks ridiculous, and that reflects the ridiculous legislation. So
yes, we actually have that here. This is a lady who made sewed, is that the right word? Sewed her own hate monster so she can take it around to parties and oppress people. Yeah. I guess that would seem to be the idea of that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
I was going to say, to me, I mean, this is dreadful behaviour. It's just awful. You can see that the police are just willingly, obediently doing political bidding here. This is politicisation of the policing to a ridiculous degree. And to me, this step is a new low both for the SNP government and Police Scotland. It's just awful in every sense, irredeemably, unforgivably awful. So bad.
Now, can I ask a question though?
Yeah, go ahead,
Why hasn't Westminster stepped in?
Yeah.
And said,
I think
this is bad
we mentioned
legislation.
that last week a little bit. That I think the idea is that they're going to hang them with their own rope, so to speak. Let them loose with that and let it play out, similar to how Sturgeon was ensnared in her own trans delusion, let's call it that, and that was the beginning of her downfall. So perhaps that they'll be just playing that out, and perhaps maybe just to be they're maybe busy on actual real things like trying to improve the economy and so on, perhaps rather than this. As Orwell said, if you want a vision of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. But the SNP have upgraded that with imagine a furry red monster cutting off your tongue forever. So apparently, though, the hate monster has been removed from the Police Scotland site. I had to look for it earlier on, and I got this. Where is it? I got the 404 page not found here. We try and look for it. So is the hate monster dead? David,
well,
is it dead, or is it just lying down?
I think it's just mortally wounded. I'm not sure. It's hard to say. I think they've obviously had second thoughts to some extent. And I'm thinking, what should we do now? Goodness knows. I mean, I would dread to think what the motivation is for anything they're doing with regard to this. But really, I just cannot believe what I've seen in the last couple of days.
Well, is it? So I'm thinking it's not just in the script, but is it? Targeted. I mean, they said it was targeted at adults, but is it targeted at children to try and indoctrinate them? You think?
Well, they did say that, didn't the police say something about this is aimed at, as you said, young males, and also they didn't say something about a false sense of white male privilege. Really, that's
something like that.
Yeah, I mean, talk about stigmatizing, if you like, a particular demographic. I mean, so goodness knows. So are they really saying that if they target children with a cuddly monster, then people won't hate as much?
Well, it's kind of against gingers, though, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah.
Is the hate monster a ginger?
Yeah, goodness me. Well, it's red.
Well, they've made him a ginger, haven't they?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well,
Which I think is a bit unfair to
the
gingers.
Neanderthals have a lot to.
Well, they've been unfairly targeted.
Yes. Well, they say that the gingers come from the Neanderthals.
Oh, is that what they say?
Well, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, is that apparently?
Yeah,
that's
but
what it is?
Neanderthals
It's some
are
kind
not
of gene that comes
as
from
Neanderthal
I don't know if
like
that's
as we
true.
thought.
Please don't know. If you are a ginger out there,
I know quite a bit about this, actually.
We're not what's the word? Committing hate crimes against gingers on the show, except if your name is Ross
We
Greer.
love gingers, unless you're Ross Greer. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Further news came out that showed the mentality of the authorities. Actually, there's going to be quite a bit about Police Scotland in this section.
Well, doesn't it seem that week after week there's just things that make Police Scotland just seem really stupid and a waste of time? Every week there's a story.
Yeah, when you have to deal with stupid stuff, that's what happens. They end up, it's like, how do we deal with this stupid law? Well, we have to make stupid regulations and restrictions, and one of these is this mentality here, which is about the perception of how the hate crimes are recorded, and it's all about the perception. So I want to read the whole thing of this out to give an idea how crazy it is. Basically, they say, for recording purposes, the perception of the victim or any other person is the defining factor in determining whether an incident is a hate incident or has malice in the crime. The perception of the victim should always be explored. However, they do not have to justify or provide evidence of their belief, and police officers or staff should not directly challenge their perception. Evidence of malice and ill will is not required for a hate crime or hate incident to be recorded and thereafter investigated as a hate crime or hate incident by the police. Notice in this description here, apart from its ridiculous believe the accuser at all costs nonsense, that they basically say they call any person who is making an accusation the victim.
Yes.
Right? Instead of saying this, the accuser. Right, so basically, any person who says they have been a victim of a hate crime is automatically assumed to be a victim of a hate crime.
Yeah,
that's not what the police are supposed to be doing, is it, David?
Not at all. Certainly not. No, I mean they're supposed to get evidence of some alleged wrongdoing and investigate it, not just assume straight away there must be a problem. But the idea of leaving police officers to make the call on whether or not somebody's offended. So now they're saying, well, of course, if anyone says they're offended, then it's been an offence. What? So anybody can say, I'm offended. Right, okay, well, you better. How do they think this is going to work out? Seriously, but I mean, the question about is this just a snitches charter? Absolutely, that's exactly what it is. Again, from 1984, wasn't there a character in that whose son had overheard him saying something against the party and told the authorities, and so his father got arrested? And that's what it'll be like. Somebody will annoy you, and you'll think, hang on, here's a WhatsApp message he sent me. I was right, I'm going to report him. And that's what will happen.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. And we'll come on to that a little bit more as well in the thing. But don't worry, everything is going to be okay according to some commentators. I read this comment by a guy called Duncan Hothersall yesterday. Now, Duncan is chair of Our Scottish Future, an organisation. He's in Labour, not in Labour, he's in the Labour Party.
That's a new one.
And one of his things, he thinks women can have a penis, which is fair enough, but I don't know if that's a hate crime against women, perhaps. Because that's the thing, it's subjective, isn't it? Right? If you say women have penises, well, that sounds too hateful to me.
Well, someone could say they're offended. Yeah,
right. Oh, I'm offended. Yes, maybe I'm offended, maybe not. Anyway, that aside, he says, much like the answer to how to avoid parking tickets is to park legally, the answer is to how to avoid prosecution under the new hate crimes law is to not to threaten, abuse, or insult people with the intention or likely consequence of stirring up hatred against a protected group. Now, about 2 minutes ago, not even 2 minutes ago, 30 seconds ago, we just had that discussion there about women and the penis and all that. Someone could easily say, well, that's transphobic speech, right? And we're stirring up hatred against people because the person would be believed automatically by the police. They're a victim instantly. Watch victims out there watching this right now, right? So the thing, though, this is a false equation, right? That a parking ticket or parking a double yellow line is the same thing as threats, abuse, and insult. Because getting a parking ticket on being on double yellow lines or being in the wrong place is measurable, right? We can measure it. The lines are here.
It's yes or no.
Yes or no. But the threats, abuse, or insults are not like that. I mean, it's based on context, voice, tone of voice, even. Many things like that. And who is really to judge what's going on there? These ambiguous laws arbitrarily applied to language are an authoritarian's delight. David, any thoughts just on this to begin with? This idea.
Yeah, exactly. As you say, we're dealing here not with, in the past it would be a plaintiff possibly and the accused. Now it's straight away, this word is very telling, the victim. The assumption is, right, somebody has suffered here right from the start. So you've now got totally ambiguous scenarios when you could take one of two very polarized views on something like, can a woman have a penis? Can you say that equally, if it's possible to offend the trans lobby by saying a woman can't have a penis, can you also say that someone who says, actually, I'm offended because I'm a big believer in biology, and these pro-trans views are offending me, therefore I'm a victim? And do the police have to look at both? Could one act have two separate victims? I mean, it's just, I don't see how this...
Well, of course, all it does is a transfer power from the individuals who are having the speech freely, right, to an authority.
Indeed.
Where it's the police, the courts, the politicians who are then saying, "Oh, I have the power now over you to judge your speech." Anyway, but Duncan goes further and he says that he claimed that misgendering was not a crime under the Act, which is true, right? He says misgendering people is not a hate crime. It will continue to be shitty, unnecessary behaviour that reflects badly on you, and you shouldn't do it unless you want to come across as an awful person. But it won't be a hate crime. And perhaps that may be true. But when I asked him, I said, what happens when someone reports a misgendering? He said the police will log it and take no further action. Why would anything else happen? And I was like, wait a minute, the police will log it.
Why would they log it?
Right. For where? For how long?
Yeah.
Right.
And more what happens to the logs?
Why? Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, and then I was thinking, well, do the police not log other non-crimes? Do I go to the police station and say, my bike wasn't stolen today?
We'll just log that for you.
Yeah, we'll just log that. It's like, what kind of thing is that? They're going to log things that aren't crimes, right? And you don't know what's going to happen with it, right? So basically, according to this guy, if you misgender someone, your non-crime will be logged by the police, but nothing will happen. Maybe it will. You don't know what the record will...
Isn't that against the personal information?
Yeah, well, that's that as well. And you don't know what the record will include or how it will be used. Yep. But we all trust the authorities never to abuse that information, do we, David? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's all we need, is to give the police yet more opportunity to build databases, or the SNP to build databases of people who haven't actually committed any crimes, but nonetheless, we'll just keep an eye on you. But I know...
It's insane, isn't it?
So Nicola's come up with a good solution, though. She says the answer to not get arrested is not to speak or interact with other people at all.
Yeah, very good point.
Well, that kind of puts a show, out of business for a start. Perhaps that's part of the whole thing there.
Exactly.
Well, actually, Mark Zegfeld, a rather regular host, he's asking, will it affect the way you do your show?
Well, I think obviously there is some kind of feeling of self-censorship. I'm going to actually just jump a wee forward point. And one of the things is that the blogger Effie Deans said that she was very careful in the language that she used in her blogs. Yep. And similarly, we are very careful in what we talk about. We usually put in disclaimers and so on. We have certain limits. We talk with any contributor who comes onto the show before that. But occasionally things might happen. You saw what happened in GB News, in fact, with Dan Wootton and Lawrence Fox. There was an example there where Dan Wootton was booted out for basically just kind of going along with what Lawrence Fox was saying. Yeah. So these things can happen, of course, in any show. But the point I was making with Effie was that, of course, they're going to target the people who are careful. Because if we are careful and we get targeted and we get brought down, then what message does that send to other people? Right? They say, well, they were careful. They were all right. And then they get something on us, and then they say, well, then the perception changes. Oh, well, they were racist, or they were this, or they were that, whatever. And that's what they're trying to do. Yeah. Right. So we can't double think ourselves all the time, so to speak.
We're going to have to start.
But you have to be. You can't, because there's too many people out there.
Sure. Too many people who've got maybe an axe to grind and have now got the limitless capability to say, I didn't like what they said there. I didn't like what they said there either. So
it's using government power, right, to regulate speech. So they can't do it themselves because they're too weak in themselves.
Yes.
Right? They can't. Their arguments are too weak, or they're just not prepared to stand up and fight like a man, as it were.
Yes.
And I don't know if that was hate speech.
That definitely is.
Right.
I'm sorry. That's
right. So, but
misogynist speech.
But so they use the power of the government to compel your speech. That's what it comes down to.
That's exactly right. Yeah, indeed. Well. Bizarre. I mean, I remember, just going back a little bit, I remember I ran into Duncan Hotherstall previously in 2021 election. He was very, very critical of all unity, and he would say, oh, you can't possibly get agreement, among the pro-UK parties. And I remember seeing it. How many election campaigns have you run, David? Great. So you've run an election campaign for Scottish Labour in the last 15 years, and you think that makes you something? Well done, mate. But I mean, as you've seen in your section there, he can't argue a point. All he can do is state and repeat his opinion, which is never more than half formed.
Yeah, he actually got quite angry and told me to to F off and talk to the police about it.
Oh, that's offensive.
Yes, well, it was. That's right.
Absolutely. But it's not just because Duncan Hotherstall isn't particularly cerebral that he can't define the new act. Nobody can define the new act because it's so flawed.
Yes, I think that's very true.
So is it true that Labour voted for it?
Some
did the 5 Lib Dems, yeah, they did, apparently, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, but that's, I mean, they vote for a lot of things. Remember, Labour, as we've said before, all they want to do at the moment is distance themselves from the Conservatives. That's what because they're still haunted by the reaction to 2014 and Better Together, and particularly the 2015 election, which I'll come on to shortly as well. But again, guys, I mean, I've said this before, the echoes of the offensive behaviour at Football Live are so many in this. It's a ludicrous overreaction to. In the case of the offensive behaviour at Football Act, there was one incident at a Rangers Celtic match when the two managers had a bit of a pushing match. That was it. And after that, they brought in all this complete nonsense, which put the onus on arresting officers to decide what isn't offensive. How is that ever going to work? Because it resulted in this nonsense legislation and cases where young working class males almost exclusively are arrested on the way to a football match, around a football match, usually for singing a song. Now, thankfully it was scrapped, but now it's back. It's been repackaged as this nonsense. But, I think, as you said, Mark, we saw echoes of this earlier during COVID, when we saw that dreadful police-led enforcement of simply unenforceable laws during COVID, and particularly with regard to hospitality. Remember that Glasgow bar?
Oh yeah, yes, I remember. They were in there and just pulled people out and
yanking them out.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. If only Jason Leach and Humza Yousaf had shared their WhatsApp message, they never even could just stood up with a glass in their hand and they'd all have been fine.
Well, they'd still have been arrested, because that's not the point. The point of power is to apply the power. It's not, it's not to just make excuses for people. Anyway, they had that in mind when they went in there as well. I mean, part of this is the process, is the punishment. You're going to be logged, right? And then maybe you'll be in fear.
Yeah.
Of that, these logs will actually come to an actual hate crime, investigation. Yes. And then if it's a show like ours, perhaps maybe that could be multiple complaints about
I'm thinking they'll probably have some kind of log of it, so that if you've had like 2 or 3, 3 strikes and you're out, or something like that.
I mean, that's the thing, we don't know.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Now, here's an interesting question. Isn't freedom of speech protected under other acts?
Well, it is. That's the thing. Of course, it is protected under some other acts as well. And of course, in any discussion about this, I always say my admiration for the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. And when I lived in the United States, it's so important that it affects almost every part of society. And you see stuff like Ofcom trying to put balance into media, for example, which is basically government interference into broadcast media. And that can't, I mean, there is FCC there, but you still, the amount of regulation is so much less, because basically say, look, it says here in the top, in the big number 1.
Yeah.
Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, and so on. So it's a big thing. We'll be back in a second. We're going to talk a little bit more about this, about comics, about potential strategies, and then there's a lot more than that to come. So better get through it. I'll be back in a second. Right, good to know that so many of you are watching it with record numbers Again, right now, over the limit there. Over 560 people are watching this show right now. And that is due to you all talking about it on social media and talking with your friends. So thank you very much for your support.
And of course, after the show, last week we had over 5,000 people on YouTube alone.
Yes,
and we're out on all the Facebook channels as well. So probably about 10,000 people watch the show.
Yeah, yes, it's pretty good. So going very well. Thank you all. If you are watching on YouTube, please, you can put a super thanks or super sticker donation. That would be great. Now, some people have said that it would be good to flood the system with complaints, but I don't think this will work. I mean, it sounds good, right? Let's complain. Everyone complain, overwhelm the police, and they'll just give up. That seems to be the idea. But first of all, I don't think most people will actually do that. People don't want to make complaints. I don't think people like snitching other people. I mean, most decent people don't like to do that, and it has to be quite extreme in that case. That's that. It's going to be selectively applied as well. We all saw what happened with Janie Godley. Godley had racist, ableist tweets. She bullied people on the internet. She had all this stuff. It was awful. She was canned from the COVID campaign for how long? She was canned for that. Weeks. And then it was a few weeks before she was rehabilitated by the Times and Scottish Society. Yeah. And, is it any surprise, though, that she is actually for this law, David? It's kind of...
God, no. I mean, you could have put your mortgage on it, let's be honest. You knew that she'd be obediently, enthusiastically behind this law because she's still firmly nationalist, even though they kicked her out, because she was going to be the voice of the COVID ads, wasn't she? She was going to be... She was going to be the famous voice, all this nonsense. And Nicola Sturgeon called her alter ego and all this.
Yes.
Yes. Anyway,
court jester.
Exactly. Well, she'll see this in the context of nothing but yet more progressive, worthy SNP law to punish reprehensible lawbreakers who deserve everything they get when they transgress, completely forgetting the fact that
unionist men usually is the thing she goes on about.
Absolutely right. She also talks a lot about Rangers supporters and members of the Orange Order because she was she not abused by a relative who was both of those things when she was very young. So she has a real
sorry to hear about abuse.
That's horrible.
That's not good.
Indeed, it's an awful thing. But I mean, she doesn't.
But I mean, that's a hate crime then to take your personal experience out to a group, of course.
Absolutely right. So, of course, if there's any, I don't know about artistic merit or poetic justice. If there's any comedic justice, she'll be the first performer to fall foul of this absurd law. I
don't think so. I don't think she. I think this is the thing, though. I mean, why are these comedians not standing up? But they're notable for their absence.
Absolutely right.
Frankie Boyle always seems to be missing in action when it comes to anything about the SNP. Where are they? When they tried this kind of legislation in the UK, Rowan Atkinson stood up. And by the way, I forgot to mention this before the show. I watched this not the 9 o'clock news thing about the. The policeman sketch, which I'll put in a link up here somewhere, and that's very good. It's very worth watching and appropriate to what's going on right now about police overreach.
Was that the one where he said he was a member? You're not fit for the force. We're going to transfer. Brilliant.
So it's a very classic. But anyway, I mean, Rowan Atkinson stood up. Many public figures stood up and said, "This is terrible. What have we got here? What are the comedians doing here? They're all kowtowing to the SNP agenda. Not a single one who stood up." It's just absolutely crazy here, So we talked about Effie Deans and so on, and who are the people left to stand up? I'm reminded of that poem. First they came for the bloggers, then they came for the tweeters, and when they came for me, there was no one left to speak for me.
Yeah, quite.
Absolutely.
Why? So why are these comedians missing in action, David?
Well,
we know why.
I think it's fear, as simple as that. I talk about this a little bit in the section later. We know there's an unforgivable lack of edgy, satirical, political comedy in Scotland. It just doesn't exist. You hear that there's that one show that's on Radio Scotland, which is very, very tame indeed, very tame. You get Off the Ball on Radio Scotland as well. That they never talk about the SNP, not a chance, because they're afraid. We know that Scottish businesses are afraid to speak out because they've said openly when we've groups I'm involved with have lobbied them. They say, look, we totally back what you're saying, but we can't do this because we won't be allowed to work if we do. And it must be the same for Scottish comedy writers and comedians. They must know they won't get work. And
they'll lose the funding.
Quite. Now, if you look at all of the pro-SNP Scottish, say, media figures, or what I should say rather is, look at the Scottish, say, actors, writers, comedians who always speak out on the issue of independence. It's always the same: Brian Cox, Martin Compston, Alan Cumming, Douglas Henshaw, Ken Stott, Irvin Welsh, even Douglas Ross and Charlene Spiteri. Every single one of them in favour of independence. Can you name one, just off the top of your head, one high-profile Scottish actor, singer, or comedian who's outspokenly anti-SNP and is given a platform to express those views?
No, the best I can think of is that David Tennant made an anti-SNP joke on Have I Got News for You, which was about, when was that, 9 months ago maybe? Right. But that is about it, really. We don't see any there. Now, they should be concerned, because there was a news article that said that comics were going to be targeted under this hate crime law, which is the training from Police Scotland basically is saying that they would be, let's see what we've got here. Herald said training materials they obtained stated that materials regarded as threatening and abusive can be communicated through the public performance of a play. In response, we were forced to roll back and say that they're not instructing officers to target actors, comedians, or any other people or groups. But it's left unsaid. Snitches will do that for them, right? Anyway, and they say, our training packages has been developed in close consultation with stakeholders to ensure officers are best prepared. I mean, this word stakeholders, I never heard this word stakeholders before a few years ago. Exactly. And we did some work for the public sector. And we were like, stakeholder, this stakeholder, that stakeholder. And we were like, who are these people? Who are the stakeholders? In this case, though, it's quite interesting you don't mention who the stakeholders are behind this thing here. Possibly certain groups that are pushing for hate speech laws.
I can only assume you must be something like that, because who else could it be? It's not. Could it be the government, the Scottish government? Could it be civil rights groups? I don't know. I really don't.
Why didn't you just mention who it is? I mean, it's very weird. Yeah, I think overall, to finish. Well, actually, what I did was the other part about this flooding the system is all that will do is prove to them that Scotland is a hate-filled country.
Yeah.
Right, and then they'll use that as an excuse to restrict us even more. So I asked Mary to get a few stats on hate. I mean, is Scotland a hate-filled country, Mary? I don't think so.
I checked on that for you, Mark, because I always do. The total number of charges reported containing at least one element of hate crime was over 5,700 in the year 2022 to 23. So it turns out that racial crime is the most commonly reported hate crime, with over 3,000 charges. I wonder if that includes Anglophobia.
No, I don't think it does.
I don't think it does. I don't think that would be allowed, would it?
That would be the number one.
Yeah, that would definitely be the number one in Scotland. Next would be sexual orientation, with nearly 1,900 charges. Disability aggravated charges, 722. Wow. 576 charges with a religious aggravation, and only 55 charges with an aggravation of transgender identity.
Right. So, I mean, we're talking in the low thousands here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Thousands.
Compared to the population of Scotland.
Compared to the population of Scotland. So this is the thing. They want us to be think there's a hateful country, and they want us to have snitching each other. And I think what we should do is we should say, no, I'm not participating in that at all. I mean, of course, there'll be some high profile cases that will come up, perhaps J.K. Rowling, whatever, and so on. But if you think that the best way to stop this is becoming a snitch.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe have a word with yourself, I think, about that. Ultimately, ultimately, I think the real hate monster or monsters are those who want to suppress other people's speech in Scotland, and we must, we can't play their game. We can't become what they want us to be to fight them. That doesn't make any sense to me. We have to fight them in other ways, and we'll have much more about that in a moment. We'll be back in a second. Moving on. The polls released about how Scots perceive devolution. Okay, all right. Poll was supposed to give the impression that Scots want more devolution, but I think it gives another message entirely. First of all, the poll said that 38% of respondents want independence. Only 38% of respondents want independence. Further destroying the nationalist lie that 50% of Scotland wants independence. hear that all the time. They're like, 50% want independence. Pretty soon we're going to be down in the low 30s, and that will collapse. It won't even when a lie like that collapses, that will be a big issue for them, because they won't. One of the main things that's keeping them going. But more importantly, 20% in this poll, and it's been more in others, want to abolish Holyrood, and only 20% want to keep it. That, to me, is a dead heat. Now, that means that a lot of people are undecided. But are they undecided because they don't know whether they should keep it or not? They're undecided because they don't want to speak up about whether they want it or not. They don't want or don't want it. That is the big question. I mean, that's before we even start a campaign. Before we start any type of campaign, now you can get a T-shirt and so on, but we billboard and so on will be coming forth with. The headline on it was 26% of people think devolution was a mistake.
Wow.
That's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it's a lot. And that's even before, I mean, that's just, we're talking, is a recent thing. It started as well. One thing I have to say, though, is the poll was commissioned by this thing called Holyrood Sources, which is a podcast that features the fake Tory Andy McKeever.
Yeah.
And the accompanying article, which is in the Times, I think, not Times, the Herald, sorry, this one here, he basically says, well, I'm not going to read the whole thing out, but basically he says that many of us have felt for some time that the pro-UK parties are failing to offer people the option that would settle the constitutional matter for good, a more powerful Scottish Parliament. I can see you all recoiling in horror from the screen as I say that. Absolutely shocking. There you have it. A poll that says, actually, if you look at it, 48% of people think devolution was a mistake, with a further 22% of people, with 22% of those people who don't know. That is more than those who think it's a success. Yeah. So once again, we're getting fake Tories try to tell us nationalist themes.
Yep.
When in fact, they should be saying, if a person was a Tory, certainly, they should be saying, our followers do not want this anymore. Devolution has been a failure. Right. It's plainly obvious. And we need to take action, not to reform it, but to get rid of it. Reform it means, could mean you're giving control to local authorities, direct funding from Westminster to local authorities, and bypassing Scottish Government altogether. So I think it's our duty to go out and talk to our friends and spread the word. We can get rid of this, says here. We get rid of this monstrous parliament and the blood-sucking parasites within.
Definitely.
David,
well,
thoughts on this nonsense?
Really interesting that those stats show support for independence falling. Yes, we all know that the SNP has this twin approach of saying, yes, we know that we are about 35%, but support for independence is about 50%. No, it's not. There's nothing of the sort. And we'll see that very clearly in the general election, because when you add together the proportions, the vote shares of the three parties who are openly pro-independence, it won't come anywhere close to 50%, I can tell you. As you probably said, the Greens but won't be factors in this election. Obviously, the SNP will still get some of the vote, but it won't be anything like 50%. And that's why they're doing all this constant backtracking, saying, oh, it's going to be a majority of vote. Oh, no, not a majority of votes, a majority of seats. Oh, no, just most seats. All this nonsense, because they're looking for anything, desperately looking for something that will make it look as if they've won the election when they won't. Yeah. So that's where we stand on that. In terms of abolishing Holyrood, that was been a bit torn on this, I'll be honest. I mean, I stood for Holyrood, as did Mary. So I feel maybe a little bit hypocritical if I said, oh, you got to abolish it. It would look a bit like sour grapes. But I have to say, it's getting close to the point where something's got to give. This just isn't working right now. And the scenes in that Parliament every day are just farcical. When you see them all clapping like obedient seals, and you see the presiding officer, as I've said before, as weak as London Lager. I mean, really, it's just pointless. Nothing, no, in any way worthy, honourable laws are being passed. It's all just fad-driven rubbish. It's just dreadful.
Well, I think, we can look at it. It's coming up to the 25th anniversary, or it is the 25th anniversary. We need to say, what has this delivered for Scots? Now, we've got this hate crime law, and for the first time, this is a law that I feel actually really oppresses ordinary people, and it's the kind of law that makes me think, what is the point in even, in doing anything? Right, and that's not the right place. I want to be in, or the country I want to be in. What I want to be in is a place where we can say, okay, we're just, people are not these busybodies all around trying to getting top of us, whether we're drivers or whether we're just even our speech or how we're polluting and all this. Now we try to guilt us into everything all the time, and it's like we're not that. We never have been that as a nation. We're we're decent people, and we don't need these busybodies busybodying us around.
Absolutely right.
I think it's beyond busybody, to be honest.
Well,
it's...
and also I think so many people are realising their mistake when they voted for it in the first place, and they said, okay, we thought this was going to be a benign thing that would help get government a bit closer to Scots. Now we see actually what's going on. They spend their time talking about, the First Minister spends his whole time talking about Gaza, nothing to do with Scotland, and the legislature basically oppresses Scots and centralises power in Edinburgh, and which has become more remote for many communities than Westminster ever was.
Yep.
Indeed.
So, yes, we do that. Next up, David's going to talk about Tory-free Scotland. Back in a second.
Now then, this week, SNP First Minister Humza Yousaf has displayed yet more of his unique brand of political sure-footedness, because he has called very openly and repeatedly for Scotland to be Tory-free. And last weekend, in a very clear channeling, it sounded like, of the Hamas from the river to the sea chant, Humza Yousaf, the First Minister, said in a speech, "From Aberdeenshire to the borders, let's free this country of the Tories once and for all." Now
that's despicable. I think
bringing Gaza
it's really despicable
to Scotland.
Questioned his choice of words, he made it clear he stood by his statement, and I will make no apologies, he always says, that nonsense. But this, of course, guys, is all part of Humza's completely baffling general election strategy, which Martin Geisler even pulled him up on Sunday in the Sunday show. Along with many, many other SNP MPs, MSPs, councillors and commentators, Humza insists that the coming election will be a battle between the SNP and the Conservatives. Now, this is despite opinion polls showing...
How does that work?
It's
really, just so laughable. I mean, for God's sake.
It's laughable. I've got
so the polls are saying that Labour are going to win convincingly in Scotland.
Exactly.
And he thinks it's between... Is that just like absolute denial of reality?
Exactly right. And this is what Geisler was saying to him. And I was out with people on Saturday, not political people at all, but one guy said to me, "Why is he saying that? Surely he's just taking the people of Scotland for fools." And that's exactly what he's doing. He's hoping nobody looks at opinion polls. So they didn't have a spring conference this year, the SNP, but they had a gathering in Perth, probably because nobody would have gone. And at which Humza assured the faithful that the coming election is a straight fight between the SNP and the Tories in most of Scotland. And when he was asked about this in the Sunday show, he said, exactly. He said, well, the thing is that Scotland has a historic opportunity to ensure that we kick out every single Conservative MSP out of Scotland. They used the word out twice. His justification being that, well, of course, the SNP is in second place in all the seats the Conservative Party holds in Scotland. That's true. That's 6 seats, Humza, baby. 6 seats. That's how many seats they won out of 59 the last time. 6 out of 59. And you're targeting 6 seats. Right, brilliant. Now, what he means is the SNP finished second in several seats. And basically, in the last election, the SNP won 48 seats and came second in the other 11. That's what happened. Okay. Now he's using that stat as from an election which was only unrepresentative, because Labour won 1 seat in Scotland, the Conservative Party won 6 seats. But according to Humza Yousaf, most seats in Scotland are a straight fight between SNP and Tories because the SNP came second, or the Conservatives to the Conservatives. This is demonstrably untrue, because if you look at it in 2019. It was in 23 of the 59 seats that the Conservatives and the SNP finished first and second either way. That's 23 to 59. That's not most seats, is it? Right. Now, let's not forget also, in 2019, the Labour vote in Scotland had fallen to a historic low of 18.6% of the vote share, far, far lower than the 24.3% of the vote in Scotland that Labour took in the wipeout 2015 general election, when they lost 41 seats. So just he's talking nonsense. He's looking back to a wholly unrepresentative election, which I'll come on to in a minute. But this is what he's saying. So what's your view? Why do you think he's doing this, Mark? Why do you think he's presenting it this way? What do you reckon?
Well, it's difficult to say. Actually, he's an idiot. Perhaps, I don't know. I mean, what is he on in this case? It's first of all, I mean, you can talk about the numbers and stuff, and you go into that. That's fair enough, and that's the first part of logically it's wrong. But I don't know if the word's ethically or morally, but it's morally reprehensible, right? To basically say, here's a class of voters that we don't want in this country, right? Even though there's 700,000 to 1 million of them in the country, at least 25% of the population, and possibly if nationalism didn't exist, possibly more if there was more balance. Who knows with that? But let's say, and not to mention that the conservative values that he is against are actually held by most Scots.
That's true.
And even Alex Salmond himself today said that they were against Thatcher's reforms for, what was it? The economic reforms were fine, because they're, of course, the Tartan Tories, but they didn't like the social part of it as well. That's what they didn't like. Well, so they say, right? But this is the thing. I mean, you've got this, and you've got, let's talk about Kate Forbes.
Yeah.
Basically a Tory, except she wants independence.
Yeah, correct.
So we're talking about this half their own party as well. Has got that. The whole of Scotland has these small c conservative values to some extent. And then, the actual Tory party are getting eliminated somehow. We're going to eliminate them. So we can imagine what would happen if if Scotland was independent, right? It'd be like all the Tories would be running across the border.
Absolutely, indeed.
And people, they might say, well, of course, that's where they belong. And that's the thing, they feel justified in that. That is not acceptable. That is actually hate speech, I think.
I agree with that. So just
it sounds like some kind of ethnic cleansing, doesn't it?
It does. It's very, very. It's the wrong language to be used. We know that certain MPs tragically have been targeted and murdered, and you cannot stir it up more by saying, "Oh, we hate Tories, we detest Tories, we want them kicked out." You shouldn't do that. Really, it's not good. But in any event, just to go back very quickly, and I just want to mention this because a couple of people are asking about the last election. The voting patterns we saw across, they will never be repeated, because the Conservative Party finished second to the SNP in 17 seats and won 6 more, 23. That doesn't mean, though, that they're currently second. They were 5 years ago, when the entire political landscape in Scotland was very, very different. You had Boris Johnson standing saying, "Vote for me and I'll get Brexit done." And you had Jeremy Corbyn as the Labour leader. There were whole areas of Scotland were never going to vote Labour in those places. But not only that, if you look at some of the seats, I'll go through this quickly, some of the seats in which the Conservatives came second last time are seats where they haven't won in decades. Central Ayrshire, for example, the Conservatives last won there in 1955. Carmarthen, never been won the Conservatives. Falkirk, never been won, neither as its two predecessors. Livingston, never been won. The Conservatives are not going to win in these seats, guys. You've got to understand this. Please, Conservative voters who are listening, please understand. You came second last time. You won't come second even this time. So please don't think you're going to win these seats. You're not, okay? So please get that into your heads. I'm not trying to lecture you here, but it's true. So the 2019 general election was an outlier because of the presence of Corbyn, almost solely because he's pro-IRA, he's pro-Hamas. People weren't going to vote for him. The Conservative Party will not achieve the same vote share this year. They won't, okay? So these are just lies from the SNP to deter people from voting Labour in seats Labour can win. That's all it is. That's all it is. And the thing is, it's saying, let's make Scotland Tory-free. It's like, this is, I don't know if you guys were in the country at the time, in the 1980s, Scottish comedy shows used to do this stuff. Naked Video had a character called The Last Tory in Scotland, and Rad Nisbet, he famously voted Tory in one episode, and he was shunned by all his pals. "Oh, you're full of surprises, eh, Rabbi?" And that's what it was like in those days. So this is where you get edgy comedy slagging off the Tories in Scotland to this day, no problem at all, but not the SNP. And that's all it is. It's simply a pack of very easily disprovable lies. And it's you can't do this. They're using the wrong language, and he's using very clear lies to describe a fake summation of what the political reality is in Scotland, and that can't be right. So,
I think all political delusions can hit reality at some point. They're going to hit a big reality when it comes to the general election. I think the results are going to be much worse than what you just cannot go out to voters and come out with just such obvious bullshit. Sorry, that's it. You just cannot do that and expect them to have any form of respect for you. The messaging is just absolutely ridiculous. Why aren't they just saying, "Well, okay, we'll fight Labour," and then go for a big target in each of the things? That would seem better.
It's when they lose to Labour, then it won't look so bad, because they say we were fighting the Tories.
Indeed. Guys, I just want to mention this very quickly also. Guys are saying on here, viewers are saying, "Look, I can't vote Labour." I understand that, guys. I totally get that. There are people who feel very strongly about it for whatever reason. The only thing I'd say is tactical voting, only tactical voting, in quite significant numbers, will beat the SNP. I can understand reluctance to vote for parties that voted for GRR bill and voted for hate crimes bill. All I would say is, by doing that, you are just making it more likely that the SNP will win again, and all that will happen then is they'll bring in yet more of this legislation. So I would just say, just focus on voting for the party that is best placed, genuinely best placed to beat the SNP, whoever it is. That's what I would ask you. If you can't do it, it's up to you, but that's what I would say.
That's it, and it's no. I mean, basically, it's the higher goal or higher purpose.
Yes,
the higher purpose here. Okay,
hold your nose.
You can deal with that. You can deal with other stuff later. But if nationalism is not defeated, then we'll just be. This will go on and on for so long. Okay, so where are we at? That was a very good section there. Mary, you're going to be up next, talking about Michael.
An update on Michael Matheson.
Oh, right. Okay, very good. All right. Just thank you all for watching the show. We're really at record numbers now, over 660 people watching right now. Glad to have you all with us.
And please stay with us. Okay, so following the majority's billboard campaign at the end of last year, Michael Matheson finally quit as Health Secretary in February after claiming £11,000 mobile data bill incurred during a holiday in Morocco. He said it was a legitimate expense when in fact it had been used to watch Celtic games and maybe some porn.
That's what he said.
Who knows what he was doing?
Watching on the thing there.
And he said, it wasn't me, it was my young sons, as any decent father would, of course.
Yes. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, now he faces being suspended from Holyrood. Because this week, finally, we got to learn what was in the report, and an official inquiry by the Scottish Parliament found Matheson breached two parts of its code of conduct by, number one, failing to abide by parliamentary policies, and number two, by making improper use of his expenses. Well, that all sounds rather benign, doesn't it? But improper use of expenses is the technical term for fiddling. He fiddled his expenses, stealing from us taxpayers, and then lied to everybody, to Humza Yousaf, to Holyrood, to the press, and to the public repeatedly until he was told that nobody was buying his lying piffle. So the inquiry's findings, which upheld 3 complaints against Matheson, will be studied by Holyrood's Standards Committee, which has the power to suspend him as an MSP and to withdraw his privileges. The sooner the better. So unlike Westminster, Holyrood doesn't have a system of mandatory recall petitions, which are triggered if an MP is suspended for 10 sitting days or more. I know they'd all be out. So if we remember, that's what happened with Margaret Ferrier, because she was an MP, or most people will know her as COVID Maggie. She'll be known as that forevermore. So that's how we managed to get her out with a recall position. But we don't have that in Scotland.
No.
Because we don't really have any checks and balances or anything. And anyway, in January, the Scottish Conservative MSP, Graham Simpson, he tabled a private member's bill at Holyrood to introduce similar measures for MSPs. But so far, only 2 Labour members have backed the measure and 21 Tory MSPs. They are not in favour of voting themselves out.
No.
So while the lack of an automatic recall system means the SNP will avoid the risk of a by-election in Matheson's seat of Falkirk West, the scandal still presents Humza Yousaf with political challenges. If Humza tries to raise, for example, sleaze cases involving the Tories in the run-up to the next general election, then he would face being challenged over his defence of Matheson's conduct. And a lot of people are asking for Humza Yousaf to please explain why he backed Matheson for so long rather than sacking him when his lies were first uncovered. I think the fact is that Humza Yousaf and senior ministers were complicit in Michael Matheson's attempts to mislead the Parliament.
Yeah, well, it definitely seems likely, doesn't it? I mean, it seems that I don't understand. Well, I do understand what happened, but I don't understand why. If I had that bill, I would go back to the Scottish Parliament and I'd say, "Look, I got this really big bill here. Can you negotiate in my behalf to get this bill down?" This is the first thing you do.
Yeah, exactly.
You say, "Can you do that for me? Because you've got the power as a government. You can, it'd be like getting your company to say, "Come on, can you someone high up to go and talk to them for me?" And I think that's fair enough. I think would be reasonable.
Be okay,
right? But he didn't do that. He hid it. Yeah. And he told them about it, but then hid it, and then it was only exposed later. And lied to Parliament, probably lied to Humza Yousaf, and then you've got Humza Yousaf there trying to say that he's a decent man and all this nonsense. You're like, what? It's not decent to steal money from taxpayers. You should be in the jail.
Indeed not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what happened to people. If it was a company and you had someone in the company who, claimed something on expenses like that, then I think you can call the police.
Yeah.
Well, maybe someone
and
should
report
actually. That's right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, remember, guys, you may well have been abroad at the time when the parliamentary expenses scandal came up, and a Labour MP, Jim Devine, his name was jailed for doing much the same. He used funds from one budget to pay for what looked like non-existent claims. That's what it looked like anyway, and it was
Right.
about 8,000. It was less than Matheson, and he was jailed for I think a year. So really, this is serious.
I don't understand why it's not been elevated to being a crime.
Yes.
It's really.
I mean, fiddling your
Absolutely.
expenses is a crime.
When you're an MP,
It's
you
theft.
simply can't do that. I mean, really. So that's not right. Anyway,
No, it's
You
not
can't
right.
do it anywhere.
Indeed.
Right, Mary, is that you? You done
Yes,
that?
yeah.
Oh, very good.
That was just a quick update on what's
Yes,
going
all
on.
right, okay, very
So
good.
we're all waiting to see what happens to
Oh,
Michael
right.
Matheson next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, but, well, yeah. I mean, it's just this
It's just such a
this guy.
sleazy. It's a sleazy story, isn't it?
He's still in a job.
Yep.
He's still taking money
Well,
from the taxpayer. What is it?
He's
100?
probably watched Margaret Ferrier, COVID Maggie,
Right,
and look how long she lasted.
right.
Well, that's even when there is a facility, the capability to get somebody out. It still took two and a bit years for
Yeah,
that.
it took a long time, right? And it's unusual, very unusual as well.
Indeed.
You don't hear it very often when it happens, but of course you should have that, as I said, should recall them all. Abolish Holyrood has a t-shirt. It goes, and you can buy one of these t-shirts in the majority store or shop even as well. You can also buy t-shirts and mugs and so on. And you can subscribe to the show, or what we really like you to do is drop a like, because that really gets us up in the algorithm. And as you know, we're all slaves to the algorithm these days. But number one, this, and the reason why we're at 684.
We're nearly at
viewers,
700
viewers, is that you tell your friends about us and say, this is the place where these people have come. I mean, we have a wee soiree, that's not really the right word, a wee
A get together,
and we talk about the things that they don't talk about. No one in the mainstream media talks about this. That's the truth. No one in Scotland talks about it.
True.
You know, comedians won't talk about it, and nobody talks about it, just us. So we welcome you with open arms. Oh, you can also do all of the above, which makes us feel really appreciated. Underline exclamation mark. Coming up, it's the moment you have all been waiting for. It is Zoomer of the Week.
Yay.
Right, listen. There is a call being heard around Scotland as nationalist leaders assemble. Listen to their plaintive wail. Is it freedom for the Glens? Is it freedom from oppressive Westminster rule? Is it freedom for the people of Scotland? No, it's freedom for the SNP campervan. From the Highlands to the sea, our campervan will be free. And now, as we all
What
know,
are you talking about, Mark?
there's an infamous camper van was impounded by the police last April when it was found languishing in the driveway of Peter Murrow's 90-odd-year-old mum.
Yep.
As part of the Operation Branchform investigation, which so far has led to arrests but no charges. Who knows when they'll come. The SNP claimed they wanted to use the camper van when it was brought as a Holyrood election battle bus. Holyrood election battle bus during COVID. But these plans were supposedly ditched as pandemic restrictions eased. Not really sure why that is the case. At the weekend, SNP sources said the party chiefs wanted the £110,000 Niesman and Bischoff camper van back to use during the upcoming general election campaign. Wait. Well, they said they wanted to use it during the election campaign. They want to trail it around Scotland, saying to their supporters, this is where your ring-fenced indie donations went.
Yeah.
Check out the quality upholstery and the mini fridge. Or they want to sell it because they're short of cash because they ain't got no donations. Not even dead people are donating to them anymore. Former Chief Constable Sir Ian Livingston said the motorhome should remain impounded until prosecutors decide whether to press charges.
Well, if it's ill-gotten gains, then they can't just give them it back,
No,
right?
yeah, that's right. We don't know if it's
if it's-
ill-gotten gains.
well, we don't know, but if it is
or not,
involved in some
yeah,
kind
that's
of
right.
embezzlement, then
Yeah, of course.
Exactly, and this is the point I made on Twitter this week. They should be screaming. The SNP should be screaming about this. If they are innocent, they should be saying, "What on earth do you mean criminal activity? How dare you? Don't you know how the very idea?" But they're not. They're just saying, "Can we have it back? Maybe no. Okay then. Okay." I mean, it's just so obvious. Isn't it really? It's just ludicrous, all of this. And this is why I keep talking about it, because I can't get away from this fact. You know, if it was a 19-year-old guy in a BMW with blacked out windows who was found with £20,000 in cash when he's got no job, you can understand that asset being confiscated. That makes sense. But for the chief exec of the SNP to buy a motor vehicle and the police say, we think that might be criminal, and a year later they're still thinking that, you think, really, how can this not be more upbeat in every conversation in Scotland? I really find it extraordinary, guys.
Well, we could see that being used as a battle bus in the general election with a hate monster driving.
Yeah.
That's what we've got. Anyway, branch farm will take another. Who knows when that will be come to fruition? I don't know if that's really the right word, but perhaps the next decade, a generation, even. So for all the idiocy of it all, I nominate the SNP. They can take our lives, but they will never take our camper van. And by the way,
I love it.
you can take our lives, but they will never take our camper van T-shirts from the Majority store. Sorry, these are a real classic. Very, very fantastic. Look how great these are. Look at that. Oh wow, that is that is great. So I think I might get some extra points for doing some product placement.
Yeah,
this one anyway. Okay.
You drive a Campervan next week, Mark. We'll know why. Yes, indeed.
Yes. Well, you know, if you know someone selling one, let me know. Okay. Right. Okay, David, you're going to be up next. Right. Right, there you go.
Okay, so my nomination this week is SNP Westminster Party Leader Stephen Flynn, after a quite bizarre appearance in BBC Question Time. I don't know if you saw it, guys. The first question was from a lady in the audience. Will the UK Conservative government's latest definition of extremism have the desired effect in terms of stopping extremism in UK politics? Flynn then launched into well, thank goodness the Conservative government's coming to an end. They're going to spend the last of their time dividing, deflecting. After 14 years of austerity, public services on their knees, Brexit appeared. And Fiona Bruce said, Stephen, the question is about and he said, we can't allow ourselves to fall for that distraction. We need to reject the Tories at the ballot box. And the Conservative guy next to him said, you haven't said a single word about extremism. I mean, when are you going to answer the question? And so Flynn then said, we need to get rid of the Conservative Party. That will sort out extremism. So again, she reminded, okay, if we could just maybe go.
Right.
And he replied, no, it won't make any difference. Right, okay, fine. And then they were carried on talking about, obviously, the situation in Gaza, at which point Stephen Flynn casually quoted, unapologetically quoted Hamas figures of casualties and deaths, demanded there's an immediate ceasefire. He was asked by Fiona Bruce, was that contingent on the release of civilian hostages? Oh, no, certainly not. No. What we should do is we should have a ceasefire, and then we'll just use our international voice to hope that
right. Scotland's international voice.
A mosquito try to bite an elephant.
Exactly. So the next panelist to speak was journalist and Israel resident Melanie Phillips, who completely castigated him. And she said it's completely untrue that Gaza residents are being denied access to water and food. Obviously, I don't know if she's later wrong, but she lives there, it says in Israel.
No, it's not.
What she just said is just so distorted and so untrue, and it was great to see his face just looked like pale. Pale isn't the word for it. He was just. He's
already pale.
Exactly.
He's the palest person on the planet.
Yeah, it's true. But they went on. They had a little bit of a set to these two, and Melanie Phillips then said, "Your outburst there was just crocodile tears and hypocrisy." And you never hear Flynn being spoken to like this in Scotland. It's great. And he reacted like a sulky teenager, and he said, "That's not just offensive. That is an outrageous, disgusting slur."
Right. It's a hate crime.
But the last thing he said was, I saw the terrible video of October the 7th, but I have the personality to be able to differentiate between the horrors of the 7th of October and the response from Israel. Wholly unconvincing, I'm afraid, Stephen Powell. Your words were rightly.
Well, I can tell you right now, if his relatives were kidnapped and held in tunnels, he'd be like bomb them right now. Of course they would. Anyone would. That's the thing. That's the reality of it. In fact, Israel's not doing that. Israel is doing a measured, as measured as it possibly can, operation to seek out all these tunnels and destroy them and so on. Of course, there's civilian casualties. That's terrible. They've managed to be able to keep that for a minimum for urban warfare, as has been noted. Anyway, sorry about that, David.
No, it's true. I agree with every word. And so, really, this is just the standard. Okay, let's have a ceasefire, but with no real thought behind it. When he's asked,
there's no thought behind it. That's the thing. That's
exactly right. It's just some bombs are falling. Let's stop it. Okay, that's great.
See, they can get away with that kind of thing in Scotland, but you can't get away with that thing when you get down to Westminster.
Absolutely right. You can't. So it was wonderful to see a member of the press, if you like, just saying, no, your words are, you've shown no understanding. You've said stuff that's completely untrue, and I don't believe you're really upset about this at all. Oh, it was wonderful, guys. Seek it out if you can.
We'll have to seek it out. Yes, we'll have a look for that one. Didn't see that. I tried to avoid question time as much as possible. It's you end up throwing a brick through the telly, but. Not that I keep bricks handy next to the sofa, but
no, I've had to ban the bricks near the telly. Right. Oh, here's a challenge coming up here. Flynn has it. I doubt he can be topped by Mary. Yes, he can. The gauntlet has been thrown down. Yes. I'm ready.
Right, you ready, Mary?
Yep.
Okay. Right. Right. Okay, well, there you go.
This is a first, and I'm very delighted to announce that my Zoomer of the week is Humza Yousaf's parents.
Okay.
Not for him being born, no.
Very good, Mary.
But for displaying, and this isn't actually funny, but for displaying anti-Semitic posters in their accountancy business windows in Glasgow. The Yousaf and Company accountancy firm, which the First Minister's father, Muzaffar, set up after he emigrated from Pakistan in the 1960s, had a large pro-Palestinian window display at its prominent Glasgow Pollokshields headquarters with posters which people say advocate for the annihilation of Israel and Jews. The Scottish Council of Jewish Communities said the images depicting a single Palestinian state within Israel's territory amounted to a call for the annihilation of Israel and the Jewish people, and they were very anti-Semitic. Locals said the window display had been on show for about, I think, for 11 months or something, or since the end of last year, and interpreted the posters as a visual depiction of the controversial "From the River to the Sea, Palestine will be free" chant. And that's been, as we all know, that's very much condemned as being anti-Semitic. The posters were removed from the window on Monday after Mr. Yousaf's officials were approached for comment. But other Palestinian flags and Free Palestine posters, which don't include the offensive imagery, have remained in place. So this basically, this causes a lot of distress to the vast majority of Jewish people in Scotland. Most of whom have close relatives and friends living in Israel. And maybe, there's maybe even people who are mourning those who were murdered and are desperate for the return of others kidnapped and taken to Gaza during the carnage of October 7th. Muzaffar Yousaf, 69, the father, very much still has active involvement in the business, according to its website. And the Humza Yousaf's mother, Shaista, she's 67, is listed as the company secretary. What do you think about this, guys? Well, my question would be, this is an accountancy firm.
Right. Yeah.
It'd be different if it was some kind of, I don't know, community thing or something.
Well, something about apples and trees, I think, is one thing. Yeah. But I think the thing that disturbs me most about his parents is that his father came to the UK and then set about trying to destroy the UK by promoting nationalist politics. And his son does the same. So I think that's egregious. It's a horrible thing to do, to come to a place and build your business there and have all clients and people around you and all this, whatever it is, and to take all the benefits of the society and then to try and break it up. I think that's really sick, actually. It's a real problem. So
what I would add is the fact that Humza Yousaf clearly can't separate his personal feelings about Gaza from his job as First Minister of Scotland
Yep.
is absolutely writ large. Everybody can see that it's the case. It seems to be the case with his parents also in their accountancy business. I mean, where does it stop, really? Does anybody who is of that extraction not have these views and not have this?
Well, that is the question, and I often think, that many people did come from Pakistan or let's say other countries to get away from oppression.
Quite
right. So and
they wanted freedoms.
They get lumped in often with these people who brought the extremism with them.
Exactly.
So, but how can you tell? That's the thing, because the ones who are extreme are so loud and vocal in what they do, and now they've got positions of power. Those extremists. So it just puts a bit of taint on the whole society. And I'm sorry to say that. That's not. There are so many. It's a shame for the many moderate Muslims, many people of moderate politics, even to see this being played out. I'm sure it horrifies many of them.
Yes. Indeed.
Okay. So, Mary, that was a bit of a deep one there, but I'm not sure it's very Zoomerish. That's the thing. I know you've got the people always behind you. That's the thing. You've got the.
It's outrageous. I mean, these are the parents of the First Minister of Scotland, the First Minister of a country, and they're being openly anti-Semitic. Yes.
Okay. So let's see what we've got. We've got mine, which was the Campervan nutters, which is definitely Zoomerish. But they're Zoomers, all right. I mean, it's just bizarre. Okay. Then we've got David's Flynn, avoid the question. Yeah, I think we'll have to go with the public vote there, Mary, and give you the vote this time.
Yay!
Yes, I think it has to be you again. It's just it's just dismal behaviour, really, all right.
Yeah.
This kind of, it's just try to break up our country, try to put this extremist politics in another area in the world on your front window. I mean, please, going to do that.
Going to do that is right.
Right.
I have to get my little thing up. Where is it? Right, and then Zoomer of the week is.
There you go. What did you say there? Please vote. That says please vote, Mary. That one. You got the wrong one up.
Oh, should be the Zoomer of the
week. Zoomer of the week, Humza Yousaf's parents.
No,
there you go. Well done.
You put the wrong one up, but anyway, it doesn't matter.
I would never do that.
Right. Okay. Very good. We are. Where are we at? We're going to close the show now. Thank you. We're so happy to have you on the show with us every week. Scotland's #1 politics chat from an anti-nationalist perspective. We had 700 viewers simultaneous, 716
at the moment.
Viewers at the moment. So thank you all for doing that. My thought for the week is it's actually okay to hate. I hate anti-Semites. I hate terrorists. I hate nationalist greed. I hate racist Anglophobes, authoritarians, and I hate Humza Yousaf's hate speech law. We hope that we can get through this, as always, and we will see you next week. Thank you all for your support on the show.
Thanks, everyone. Good night. Thanks for all the comments.
Thanks for watching and contributing, guys. See you next week.
Right, see you later.